tonight. Um, Anyone who volunteers or works in a prison is no doubt aware that prisons and anger issues seem to go hand in hand. And the experts who study the issues say that many, if not most, inmates are themselves the victims of trauma, and are the product of a violent upbringing, or that they grew up in a violent neighborhood. For a lot of incarcerated people, violence started at a pretty early age, and the prison environment just only amplifies it. Mental health problems, the just the loss of freedom, the lack of privacy, and the constant threat of violence inside a prison kind of, make you wonder if anything can be done to quell violence. Well, the answer is yes, there is something that's being done. There are people and organizations making a positive impact. And tonight I will be talking with Rita Sloan. And she's someone who is making a difference to bring down the levels of violence inside of our prisons. Rita is the coordinator for the Alternatives to Violence Project in Nevada. In fact, she's talking with us tonight from Reno. So hello, and thank you, Rita, for taking time out of your super busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you for having me. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite topics, unless you want to ask me about my grandchildren.
Okay, well, we'll do that at some time. But tonight, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your background prior to the work you do. Were you like a social worker, a teacher, a counselor, what?
Um, gosh, just pretty ordinary. I got married young. We started a family young, and all through those early years, I kept thinking, oh, I really wanted to go on to college, but it just didn't work out at the time. Um, Long story short, I went to college, finished my university, and then got a master's after my kids were grown up, and they had all gone to the university. And so they were all grown, getting started in life, and then we were starting to have grandchildren. But had um, I had worked as a school secretary for 20 years,
Hmm.
and I decided it was time to start something different. So, and I went to school, and I really enjoyed it. And so then, fast forward about the AVP program. It was in 2000. Well, in 2001, we all know what happened on 9/11. And within a couple of weeks, the government was talking about going to bomb Afghanistan. And there was a small group of us in what we called a peace group. And we had talked about a lot of things, and we met regularly. And we were um, so when that international and national news started or happened, we got serious about what can we do to oppose a violent response. And there was meetings, and soon after, and very soon after 9/11, we started meeting um, at the federal building in downtown Reno, and having people have an open mic, speak their mind, and respectfully, and it was good. And we drew crowds, large crowds. And then it subsided a little bit. But then in 2003, when we are going through, getting ready to go into um, Iraq, that the numbers swelled again. Well, at one of those gatherings, a couple got up and said, there is a program that's done mostly in prisons, and it's called the Alternatives to Violence Project. And if anybody would like to learn more about that, please let me know. Well, I thought everybody would be mobbing this couple. Apparently, I was the only one who mobbed them. And I
Wow.
said, I'd really like to learn more. And they said, well, we have a workshop finally on the schedule. And if you can make it, we'd love to have you. But you have to do background check and stuff like that. So fast forward, and I took the workshop. And my life changed almost instantly. It
Wow.
was such an impactful workshop, and it was such a beautiful experience.
Mm,
And I'd never been into a prison, never saw myself in doing that, but um, that's where the workshop was being offered. So I wanted to go check it out. And I
mm,
have been learning from AVP ever since. It
mm.
does not get old for me. It's each workshop is a really a unique and special experience. So that's a lot of years in a short
Yeah,
summation.
yeah. Well, I thank you for that. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the organization Alternatives to Violence and how did it come into being? And why was it founded? Um, why was it founded to work with inside of a prison?
Yes. Uh, this year, AVP, the Alternatives to Violence Project, celebrates its 50th year. It's
Wow,
50 years ago. It
wow.
started in Greenhaven Prison in New York. And the story I understand is that there was a group of Quakers who were working with some of the inmates, and the older inmates who met with them regularly asked them what could be done about what they thought was what they were seeing as increased violence among the younger inmates coming in.
Mhm,
And they said, "Is what can we do? How can we address this?" And then the Quakers and the inmates together began to develop this program and offer workshops. And it grew and blossomed. And here we are 50 years later. It's in many
mhm,
states. It's on every continent. It's all over the world.
mhm,
I read testimonies from people all the time from all over the world.
mhm,
It and this sounds funny, but there's something magical about it. There's something that happens in a workshop that um, allows people to be a little more trusting,
mhm,
share a little bit about their own story,
mhm,
and by listening to one another, I know this is true for me. I've learned a lot. I
mhm,
grew up in different circumstances from many of the people I've been with in workshops, and yet each of their stories is unique and special too. There are common
mhm,
things, but there's also a lot of uniqueness. And um, I've been surprised over and over when somebody will say, the lesson I learned because of this incident is this. And it
mhm,
just gets me thinking about it. Just my favorite one liner for AVP is AVP opens up hearts and minds to
mhm.
new possibilities in life. And I
Wow.
think that's true of almost everybody who takes it. Your thinking changes a little bit.
Is that the organization's primary goal?
But I've been looking over the in anticipation of the interview, looking over the pamphlet and looking at the spirit of it and so on.
Yeah.
But people are very much on the same page. The manual that we use for we call it an experiential workshop, and we go through these different experiences together. Sometimes small group, sometimes whole group, sometimes one to one. So all of these experiences, they are we do things and then we discuss it in a circle. And now I lost track of the question. I started to go there. Um, the question was on. You just asked me the question, and I think I got sidetracked.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just asking you what the organization's primary goal was,
So,
but
so
it,
yeah, the goal is that's it's a strong belief that we talk about something called transforming power, and that's the unique name that AVP gives this. But it's a belief that all of us, all of
mm,
us have the ability to transform a situation from
mm,
potential violence to something better. And
you know,
it's not only for experts who've studied peace and really know there's good ways to study things, nonviolent communication, different things like that. But it's a belief that any of us can change a situation by our attitude, by our words, by our listening, by a lot of different ways we say in AVP, conflict is inevitable. We don't all think alike at all, but violence is not inevitable.
Yeah.
We can make
Wow,
a better
interesting.
choice. And that's what we call the transforming power. You can transform a situation oneself. And probably people have done it in their lives and don't even realize it, didn't call it something formal.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you made a better choice for a response to conflict. And we don't go for we go for win-win situations. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to step back and let this person have his way, or not argue with it. It's we also have a right to say what we want to say, and if we have a good opinion, we have the right to express it. But we don't need to go to violence, and we should be listening to one another. Somebody else might have an entirely different viewpoint on the situation, and that's what we need to get at.
I'm really interested in hearing how you can just lower your own temperature, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. But what kind of just listening to you now, I'm just wondering, addressing violence inside of a prison is a kind of a risky topic, isn't it? And what here's the other question is what fear did you initially have to overcome to work in a prison setting with a potentially violent people? How did you overcome your fear?
Well, I know this sounds funny. I'm not a really fearful person, and that's just the way I am. Maybe that's not a good thing sometimes. Maybe I should be more aware. And my husband, for instance, is very aware, and he can't imagine anybody wanting to go into a prison. And yet, I found it life-giving when I got in there, partly because the people I encountered, there are very violent people in prison, and well, we're all have had the potential for violence. But the Alternatives to Violence Project is an all-volunteer program, and that goes for us on the outside, and we want our participants to be there voluntarily. Now, we have had incidences where a caseworker kind of coerced people to come in. They didn't tell us till the end, because we try to tell them that you shouldn't be here if you don't want to be here.
Right.
But they kept quiet because they didn't want to get in any kind of trouble. And then usually the response was, I'm so glad I stayed. And so, but we do like it to be a voluntary situation. So therefore, it's not that we haven't encountered a problematic person here and there. That has happened. And we all practice our best with our tools that we call our toolbox, but to achieve a better relationship with the person who's looking. It seems to us a couple of times people wanted to be disruptive. That was their goal, not otherwise. And it always surprises when I'm thinking of one person in particular, and this person came back for an advanced workshop. And it wasn't even partway through the day of the advanced. A few of us facilitators on the break asked him why he was there. And he got a little belligerent and he left the workshop. That's a very rare thing that happens, but it did happen. And he really didn't. I mean, we weren't telling him he couldn't be there, but he just couldn't answer why he really wanted to be there. So being fearful, I feel safe there. And with AVP, we have done this for so many years that it was 2003 when I first started. We've done this for so many years. We have built up a facilitator team on the inside, and inside facilitators do not conduct workshops on their own. That's one of the AVP rules. They have to have a couple of outside facilitators working with them. But we can go in and we can have a very good sized facilitation team. And the men who have joined our teams are all different backgrounds, some very violent backgrounds, some less so. Um, a couple of us have commented, many of us have commented that we feel very safe, and they're very watchful. They watch everything, all inmates do. They're very attentive to everybody's movements, to their demeanor, they watch
Mm,
everything. And
yeah,
it's a safety thing for them. They're very attentive to all kinds of things.
yeah, that's really good. Um, how do the inmates find out about the in-prison programs? What are they told, in other words, that
Yeah.
they expect from the program?
When we started, I was at a prison that's now closed, and that couple of people that I told you about, uh, two of them had come from another state and had done AVP there. And one of them was working with the system. She was an employee of the system, and she had brought it to the warden and to a caseworker. And this caseworker was intrigued with what he'd heard about the program. And he was the first person to allow it. Now, the situation with the Nevada Department of Corrections has changed a little bit. At that time, the warden authorized the program. Since then, and then we were asked to later take a training. But within a few years, the Department of Corrections became more regimented about you have to do their training before going in as a volunteer. But that was how the very first AVP Nevada got started. And it was mainly due to the caseworker who gave us a list of people. And each time we did a workshop, he said, now, this person's got a history, this person's got a history. He says, we said, all we ask is that they be volunteers. And um, what he told us was that he says, I want you to keep doing these because I have seen a difference on the yard. That's what he told us. So when he put out the advertising for the program and they had signups, I don't know what words he used, but a similar situation happened at another Nevada prison, and that there was a woman caseworker there, and she put out a advertising that we were going to hold the workshop.
Mm,
And so she, again, did her best to advertise it. And I don't know how she did that exactly, but we told her we wanted to be all volunteer. And it's 3 days you're committing to. We want the commitment. And she told us she saw a difference on the yard. Now,
mm,
those two caseworkers were really unique and special. They were among some of the others are seemed to be less attentive to what's going on. However, the one out at the other prison said that after a few workshops, she had to make a waiting list. And there was often over 200 people on the waiting list. So the
gosh.
word spread quickly among the inmates. So that's how most of them got it, was word of mouth. And it's just a good program. And
Yeah.
so and we have built up an inside team at every prison we've been at, except for one.
So what do you think the caseworker is seeing in the yard exactly? What is
They
it
just
that
felt
made them go, wow, something's changing here?
I think people were talking to each other that maybe hadn't before. More than once in a workshop, a man would say, oh, I've passed this guy, pointing to someone in the workshop, every day. I know I kind of know who he is. I know what he looks like. We've never said hello. He says, from now on, I'm saying hello. And that
Mm,
was the stretch for him. And
mm,
I had done early on I went up and did some workshops in California with some California AVPers up in Susanville. And there we went into a maximum, and it was a similar thing. One man said, I don't care who you are. I'm going to talk to you when I see you on the yard.
Mm.
And later on, I was told his situation was a little different because they have at that time some kind of serious divisions, racial divisions. People stayed with their groups, and so being friendly to another group wasn't always acceptable. But that's what we heard, that they wanted to be friendly because they got to know people.
Well,
In a
okay.
workshop, a little bit of a community forms, and people get comfortable with each other.
Okay, well, we got to know now. Tell us about the program, how it's presented to inmates. Um,
I know.
what happens
It's
first?
well, it's like I said, it's called experiential,
Yeah.
and so we have a manual of
Are
ideas
people
to
in a
use.
circle or are they sitting in
Yeah.
rows? Like,
Oh
what's
no,
the
no,
room
no.
look like?
We circle is what we generally do, a big
Okay,
circle,
okay.
and the idea is we say in the beginning, we are all here learning, and we are all here as teachers. So everybody's a teacher and a learner. And then the circle is egalitarian. There's no head of the table or anything like that. Of course, we who are the facilitators guide the actions. We post an agenda of all the things we're going to do in this time period, and everything has a name, but it's so they're little activities. Some of them are get up out of your seat and move. Some of them
Mm,
we get into a small group. Some
mhm,
of them you get into a pair and discuss something. Some
mhm,
of them are we do a concentric circle discussion. There's just a lot of variety of action and activities, and we call them exercises. And then we come back to the big circle and we talk. So the idea is
mm,
we do something, and what did we learn from doing? And um,
mm,
kind of prime it a little bit. Well, does anybody want to share anything?
mhm,
And sometimes somebody's ready, they're just ready to share. And sometimes you ask a more leading question. So, did any feelings come up for you? Uh,
mhm,
Good
mhm,
feelings, awkward feelings, whatever. Did any feelings come up? It only takes one person to start discussing, and pretty soon two or three others start joining in.
right.
And then it'll trigger something somebody else wants to say. Um, so the workshops go like that. We post the agenda, we tell them what's
Mhm,
coming up. At the end of the agenda time, we do a little quick review and just say, we said, tell us what you thought. We want to know, because if we get a negative response to this same exercise every time, then we'll consider changing that. And
mhm,
sometimes the negative is just because it brought up some serious emotions. It's not
yeah,
because it was a bad exercise.
right.
So different things come up in the evaluation, but people get a chance to express what they think.
Mhm. How do you
In
get
between,
an inmate who may have, I just have to ask this right here, but
mm-hmm,
how do
mm-hmm.
you get inmates who may have real serious differences or belong to a different prison faction to be comfortable with each other?
You would think that it wouldn't happen, but
You would think, you would think.
yeah. But again, when I was first starting, I did some workshops up in California, and I was told in one of the workshops that there were a large number of Hispanic men there, and the main facilitator for the California group said, we have both norteños and sureños here. So they are opposing groups, gangs, I guess. And she said, and they have been violent towards one another, but they've all agreed to come to this workshop. There were some really nice moments when people, I didn't know who was who, but they knew who was who.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful workshop. There was
Mm,
no violence in it. And there were some really positive things that people said.
mm. You think a
So
lot of it is just the fact that people are just together?
I think in the beginning, people come in and they are nervous. They are a little, they're very closed, and they don't know what's coming up.
Yeah.
And one of the frequent comments we've heard is, when I started this on the first day, I didn't know how I was going to get through 3 days of a prison program, but I stuck it out. And now it's the last afternoon, and I don't want it to end. We have heard that comment so many times. So and this sounds silly, but it's something magical happens. Something really profound happens to people. I don't know. And it's not always really dramatic, but it's always very positive comments that we get. Um, sometimes things get very serious. The exercise will lead to serious things come up for people. Sometimes we do, so we have in between our exercises, we have what we call light and livelies. And those are 5 to 10 minute moments where we do something silly or fun or gets us moving. And one of the first things, not always do we get this comment, but somebody will say, well, I never expected that we were going to do kindergarten stuff here. But it does break tension. It gets us out of our seats, and they are fun. They just make you laugh over silly things. And so those, I say this a lot. People, they do get emotional. The workshops sometimes get emotional, sometimes get very deep, and sometimes people go to tears. And it only takes one man to go to tears to give others permission. And they know that they're not ridiculed, and they may go to tears too. So it's been very emotional a lot of times for all of us. And there are moments when I have never laughed so hard in my life. I've had such fun in some of the workshops. So there's both the very serious times, the very fun times, the camaraderie builds, the jokes build, and people, like I said, sometimes at the end of 3 days, they say, I don't want this to end. Um, and they do speak personally about their changes of thought, their willingness to try something. On the transforming power thing, I was thinking of a story as I was talking, and I don't seem to stop sometimes, so you might have to keep interrupting me. But we were doing something about talking about the transforming power and what could be done, what could be said, what could turn the tide. Sometimes saying something comical will ease the tension. Sometimes other things work. We have a whole list of possibilities you could try. And a younger man, there's all ages, and kind of, I don't know what to say about him. He was, I think, a little reserved in believing in what was going on, but he was participatory. Well, he came back from lunch, and he and a couple others were talking about lunchtime experience, whatever it was that happened. And we started in with our gathering circle, and he says, I got to say something. He says, this here program, he said, what you were talking about before we left for lunch, it worked for me. It worked for me. He says, and then his friend joined in. He says, you're not kidding. He says, he got into an altercation at the lunchtime. He said and did things he would not normally have done, is what he told us. He said, if I weren't in this workshop right now, I would be in the hole. But he said what he had heard that morning gave him pause, and he reacted differently. I don't know all the details, but he said, and his friend vouched for it. He says, you're not kidding. He says, it changed us. So that's really gratifying to hear when it works immediately, you know. But people have to internalize it.
How long is the program? They were saying, I wish this lasted forever. How long does it last?
18 to 24 hours is what a workshop is, over 3 days usually.
Okay.
And we've had permission to do 3 8-hour days And so we do the max, but that counts their lunchtime and some breaks. Partly because because there's just a lot of good exercise. So sometimes we cut them if something goes overtime, we can't get it all in, then we have to cut some things, change the agenda. But it's we usually do the whole time, and people commit to it. So we're like 8 to 4 in most of the places.
Yeah.
So,
So if it's at 3 days, do you come back? Do you come back in a few months, or how does that work?
well, all that we've done in the prisons was the way it was before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Then when COVID hit, then no programs were going in. And then after COVID, and this was a national issue, because I talked to people at the federal prison where we were too, and in state prisons, and I've read things that people were prisons were short-staffed, understaffed across the nation.
Yeah.
And so they weren't allowing programs back in yet because they just didn't have the manpower to cover all areas of the prison. We do not have an officer in the workshops with us. We ask for, that's one of the things we ask for that nobody share what's going on. Confidentiality is huge. We are sometimes watched by officers on a catwalk above us or in a room near us. They can watch us on camera, but they're not in the room and they're not listening for the most part. I mean, we know that. They've been clear about that. But now I got off sidetracked again. So on the
You're doing good.
so going back into the prisons has been very slow getting started. In fact, we are still kind of preliminary right now. I have met with a new Nevada Department of Corrections, the deputy director in charge of programs. And she has been very positive about getting this restarted.
Good.
We've had a couple of in the community workshops. In fact, we're having one starting tomorrow. And those workshops, we have permission now for these. We've done, this will be our third one in the community, along with, besides community members, we have some men from a transition center who are still technically in prison, but they have some permission to leave for, they're getting ready to transition out. So they have permission to get a job, hold a job down. Their actions outside the where they're held are very much monitored, and they have bus schedules they have to adhere to. They can't return late or they're in trouble. So, but they were given permission to do a workshop twice with us in the fall, and again, the one starting tomorrow. And that's one of the things we ask for in a workshop is a lot of diversity. We ask the list be diverse. In the prisons, we found one place for a while was giving us only men who were scheduled to be released in the next year or so. And so we started hearing this, that they were getting out. And so we said, well, please give us people who are here lifers. We want people with diverse sentences. We want people with diverse ethnicity. We want people with diverse ages. We want the older people, the middle, the young ones. We want diversity of crime. It doesn't have to be a violent crime. It could be a white-collar crime. It could be a drug crime. We want diversity in the room really enriches the workshops. So when we do these community workshops, it's a little harder to get the big diversity, but we work on it. And so, and when in the prisons, so we asked, please. And for a while, they were only giving us people being released. And then there was another time they were doing, only people who had violent crimes. And we said, we're fine with people who had violent crimes, but not only. Let's make it really diverse. And so that it's rich. It's not just about people who have a violent crime, because in AVP we say we all have the potential for violence. We all probably do violence in little ways anytime. This is my thinking now, but anytime we do something to slight another person, if I gossip about somebody, if I do name calling, if I ignore someone, those are little forms of violence. They are not acknowledging and respecting the human person that I'm working with. And so, or I'm dealing with. And so, I find myself, I'll yell at the TV when certain people come on there that I think are totally wrong and they need to be told. And then I think,
Yeah.
am I really looking at that person as we say there's like the Quakers, that there's good in every person. And I tell you, there was a man one time, this was also again up in the California prison, but that's because we were in that maximum that time. And there was an exercise where we were asking people to talk about some of their good points. And so I came to him and I was passing out some papers or something. And he said, I'm not doing this. He says, I'm just not doing this. I said, well, you have the right to pass. That's a guarantee. You don't have to take part if you don't want to. I said, you have the right to pass, but can I ask why? Because all you were supposed to do is just talk about your good points. And he says, because there's nothing good about me. And I said, and I was a lot younger then, and now I wouldn't be so worried. But at that time I said, well, you look to me to be a clean person. He says, of course I'm clean. I am very clean. I said, that's a good thing. And the room just roared. They all laughed. The guys laughed. And he did take part in the workshop or in that exercise. And I said, there's other things. You can find them. And so anyway.
Well, you are attempting, it looks to me like, to have inmates examine themselves,
All of us. Yeah.
that would maybe hopefully lessen their dependence on violence, as a solution.
This is what we always say, that conflict is inevitable, but violence is not. And we all need practice and skills on how to respond verbally, maybe other ways to respond, and that's what we try to work on that throughout.
Yeah.
But we also stress, looking for the good in people. We do exercises that look for the good in people without blatantly saying, except for that one, tell us good things only.
Yeah.
You cannot talk and say anything bad, even like, I'm just not good at that or something. No negatives, only positives. So we do that, affirmation, we call that. And then there's also, we work a lot on communication. And communication, everybody thinks, is how to get your opinion across or your thoughts across. But a big part of communication is listening. And we all, I think, at least I know I need more and more practice at listening and not thinking of how I want to respond, but thinking of what is this person saying and then respond. So listening exercises that's important. But talking is important, communicating, but listening is a huge thing. We work on that. So affirmation, communication, other things. I said there's a lot of C words: the communication, the consensus, community, all that kind of stuff. We do try to work on. I'm just babbling. I don't want to get off track.
No, you're not. You're not babbling. I love your idea though of listening and and not formulating something while somebody's talking, because I do that all the time. In fact, I just did it. I have another question for you, and I just did that. But so I have to work on that. But we only have a couple of minutes of you and me time. I have to ask you this. I would think that that the Alternative to Violence program would have to address prison culture itself. And how do you address that? Because you got people there who are just mired in prison culture. There's a code, among inmates. How do you separate people or have them want to separate themselves from the mindset and the behaviors of prison culture?
I think it does come up, it's bound to come up because that's their lives.
Exactly. They're swimming
And
in it.
so they are. And we do one possible scenario. What do you do if somebody cuts in front of you in the chow line? And they all roll their eyes and they say that happens every single day and blah blah blah. What could you
Yeah.
say? What could you do? And they come up with some possibilities. And they said, the best thing is just don't make a big deal out of it because then you'll start a ruckus and whatever. But
Well, go ahead.
specifically talking about their issues there, yeah, we do talk it because they bring them up. They talk about what would be some suggestions,
Yeah.
and the group will offer suggestions.
Yeah.
And yet, one man, this I think answers a little bit the question. One man said to us on a break one time, or not, wasn't a break. We were all talking, and he just said, kind of under his breath, he says, I just realized something. He says, I'm here in prison, but I'm free. I am free to make my own choices. I am
Mm,
free. I don't have to listen to that guy. I don't have to listen to that guy. I am free. And I thought it was really profound. And I said, you should say that louder. And he wouldn't, but he was profound, yeah, for
mm,
him. And I thought it was a good thing to say. So we are free to give our responses how we do it. And the stories, the transforming power stories just start to come out. It's really a good
I
thing.
would love that, and maybe you'll talk to to the group about that as we have questions. I'd love to hear more stories of transformation. But my last question before we open it up to the group here is, and I've talked about Embrace Fully's central focus is to aid an inmate's moral character transformation. Um, can you see any possible ways that our two organizations might be able to work together to make prisons safer for those people that live in them and work in them?
Um, well, there's no denying that both organizations are working to make life better for people and to help them also make better choices. And the one thing about AVP is that it is not a religious program. We say that in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It happens that, well, I don't know if I'm going to say that, but almost all of us facilitators have some kind of a religious background, the ones on the outside, but not all. There's one guy who's definitely not. And one of our inside facilitators, one time we were doing a continuum line, and it's a long story, but he's an avid non-believer. He's an atheist. He's proud to be an atheist. He is the most kind and nice man and repentant man he'll be in there for all his life. And he is such a delight to know. And so and there was a time when I would when I was a young person, I would think, oh, the poor guy, he's just missing this wonderful part of his life. But he's happy and he's trusts in science. He's got a scientific mind and he's got such a good heart that I don't worry about him. But as far as the two groups working, we don't talk religion. People are free to talk about what's important to them, though. So if they want to say that they had a moment in their religious group or whatever, that's perfectly fine. But we say there can be spiritual moments in AVP, and there are, definitely are. So, but now back to what we were trying to get the two groups together. Um, they're not in opposition. It's just that we have similar goals. We want life to be better.
Yeah.
But the one thing about and I this is why this works for me because I know people in my own faith who do go in and do Bible studies and religious prayers and with people. And I said, for me, the program I hope attracts people who don't expect us to be giving them any religious information. And it works for some people that they don't want that. On the other hand, one time a man sold us on a break. He says, I want to thank you people for not pushing your Christian value, your Christian teaching on us. I said, what makes you think we're Christian? And he says, oh, you're Christian, all right. And I thought that was a compliment, but I never owned up to it to him. So,
You
um,
stayed neutral.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we aren't, the goal is, you know, um, hopefully,
Well,
be
the
an
goal is to
example,
practice, it sounds like to
to
me,
be
is
an
what you are
example,
doing,
yeah, by our
is that
actions.
you're really actually practicing something and not so much just yapping about it.
Talking about it, right?
I'm not saying that's what people do, but I'm just saying it can
No,
happen.
exactly. And I know some people really do search for a faith or something they can hang on to, and they're
Yeah.
I do know people like that in our that come to our groups too. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing. Yeah, it's all good work, and I don't think it takes long for the inside people on the inside. Are, like I said, they're very aware of their surroundings, and they also, I think, can detect phoniness. Somebody who's not speaking what they really say they are, or not
Yeah.
believing what they say they're practicing what they preach. I guess that's the word
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So they're pretty good at picking up on people's.
You kind of have to be, I would say,
I think
from
so.
my little experience. We're going to, Gabriel, are you there? Let's let's um, let's open this up to anybody, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing, Rita. I know that's the tip of the iceberg. I actually had
It is.
five
I
more
hope I.
questions that I couldn't even that I'd love
I
to
know.
ask you about, but hope somebody else will.
Yeah, so if you have a question for Rita, if you don't mind waving your hand or use the Zoom to raise your hand. While we're doing that, Rita, I'm gonna post into the chat the website for your state website. This is Alternatives to Violence Project Nevada, and then also to the USA. If people lived in a different state besides Nevada, would the USA be a good jumping off
Yes.
place if they wanted to learn more?
Yes, absolutely. They can put you in touch with somebody in a different state. Um, California has a very large AVP network. I keep thinking someday Nevada's will get to the southern part of the state, but California's got some really strong organization groups in different places. And I this is what I was told that some years ago that a couple of wardens had experienced AVP in their facilities, and then the wardens as a whole got together as a group and wanted to promote AVP in all the facilities, and even offered some like financial help to get out and train more facilitators so the program could grow. And I don't see that happening in Nevada, but we
Eh,
keep working on it.
And you might have mentioned this, but is AVP facilitator training open to sort of anybody who's interested, or do you have to be
That's a good
involved?
question. Everybody does AVP the same way or becomes a facilitator. Um, Everybody takes a basic. You just go in there and you take a basic when there's one scheduled, and it's for the most part it's been in the prisons. That's where we've done the bulk of ours. Now we've done a couple on the outside. We've done a few over on the outside over the years. And so then if you want to go on more, there's an advanced workshop, another 3 days. Um, the participants have a little more say in the focus of that one. So they're usually a topic centered workshop. Anything from we let the people in the workshop choose. But there have been workshops on anger, on forgiveness, on communications, on parenting, on all kinds of topics that whatever the group decides on. And so then we can tailor some of the exercises to those things. after the, and we usually say people can't repeat a basic because our basics are pretty much routine, little changes here and there. The advanced are all unique because of the topic choices and so on. So the advanced workshops are a little more intense and a little richer, but just similar experience. And then the third level is a T for F, training for facilitation. And we do one of those after a few basics and advanced and test the waters, especially if you have an inside group. They can tell you if they have 4 or 5 names of people who want to be trained, or 8 or 10 names of people who want to be trained as facilitators. And then when we have enough, we'll do a facilitation training, a T4F training. And I don't think I mentioned that AVP workshops are generally 20 participants plus the facilitators. So sometimes we have as many as 25 in the room, but we have to cap it at that because it really does get to be too much beyond that. But 20 people makes for a rich, diverse workshop.
And then does that apply for people on the outside who want to then go into the facility? They're
And this
doing
is
their
kind of where
training
we are
inside of the
right
facility.
now. This is where we are because like I said, I've met with the person and she really wants to see AVP. We need to build up our facilitation team because from back since the COVID time, some of us were older, a lot of us were older. 2 of our best facilitators have moved to another state to be near their grown children and their grandchildren. A couple of others are older people who really had already retired and now they're really, really retiring from everything. Different reasons why. So our facilitation team has been cut down from what it was, and we're working on training some new ones. So we're in the works and building it up again.
And it does look like on the AVP website, it does say get involved. You can take a workshop, become a facilitator, join a group, donate. So I think that might be a really good resource and starting place. Let's see, do we have any questions or comments, or is that Marlon, or is that a hand up? If so, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Sloan. I took AVP here at California Medical Facility with Joycey.
Where?
With Joycey at California
Joycey.
Medical Facility.
Oh, okay.
And to address David's question about how does it address the culture, the prison culture, it addresses the culture, to me, it addresses the culture by men sitting in a room on equal field. It gave them something other than do and think about violence. They never even really mentioned violence in the activity. But violence was dealt with how we spoke with one another, how we listened to one another, how we communed with one another, how we laughed with one another. That's how the violence was dealt with for me. And it helped me see as the A is alternative. There's a way we can communicate with each other without having to raise our voices, without having to slight one another. And those things came to fruition with all the different activities. We had no idea going in, we had no idea how the activities would help us relate to one another. And that was the beauty of each exercise. We had no vision of the outcome, but the outcome brought us together as a whole, as a unit, from the people in the inside and the people on the outside. And we all got something from one another. We got something from the facilitators, and the facilitators got something from us. And so and it actually gave me permission to heal from my crime, because I was so overwhelmed with guilt. But the people resonated with my story. And I also learn from theirs. And so that's why I said that's how it deals with the culture, because it gives us something new to think about. Because it gives us a frame, it gives us a starting point of, to learn how to be one with another instead of being in adversity with one another. And it's very um, enriching, and also very something special about how it brings us together as family. Some of the same people I that was the first major group I took in prison. Some of the same people I went to AVP with, I did the basic and the advanced. There are some of the same people that helped work to continue the process of helping me learn how to do what I need to do to get out of prison. So it didn't just stop after the AVP. We all just kept moving forward for the most part. We all kept moving forward together, trying to help each other heal. And it's kind of what we didn't want to leave anyone behind. I don't want to take up all the time, but yeah, just it's very. It was AVP was a starting point of me learning how to be okay with being me and okay with learning from another, and it's beautiful. So to me, I never got to see color. I just got to see men hurting that wanted to learn how to stop hurting.
Mm.
Thank you.
Well said,
Can
Marion.
I just
Thank
say
you.
something to Marlon? Marlon,
Yes.
how you were relating as a group in a better way, but how did you relate to those who weren't in that program afterward?
Well, because what happened is that you saw what it can do. We going in, we didn't know each other. We didn't know each other. We didn't, but we formed a relationship, a union, to where it says, you know, just maybe, if I take a risk to engage with someone, to connect with someone, then maybe they'll be healed too, or maybe that they'll get a different perspective of what life is about, of what another human has to offer. It's not all about the pain. It's about the journey of healing.
Thank you, Marlon. That was very well said. Very well said.
That's what Marlon does.
Ah,
Go ahead, Pam.
So it's seeing the possibility in each person. It is seeing that good in each person. And just to have somebody recognize that can be overwhelming. Recognize that in themselves. Transforming.
Rita, what's the process for establishing a new AVP group in a facility where one doesn't exist? Is there a straightforward way that happens?
yes, that's a good question. Well, that couple I told you about who started AVP here, and we worked together for a few years, and then they moved on to other things, and I don't know, it just the call to do this didn't go away from me. And I have had contact with people. I've known some people in Las Vegas. I've had contact with people there. I know people in their churches, and I know people. My sister-in-law at one time was a counselor down there, and so everybody said, "Oh," I said, "if you get a group together, I'll travel there as often as it takes to get everybody up to speed to go into the prisons in the southern part." And there was a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning, but then, as you can imagine, it really takes some momentum to get people to do it. And I have high hopes that this new deputy director in charge of programs here she wants to see it spread. So maybe we'll find a way to maybe she'll have contacts, whatever, to make it happen. But like I said, in California, wardens were advised that this is a good program, and they said you should invite it in. And now, if the Department of Corrections here were to say that, that would make a big difference. And in fact, in the federal system, we were in the one federal prison. They made it one of their sanctioned programs, and so the one closest to here in Herlong, California, but it's the closest to Reno, they were just welcoming and anxious to have us come, and they did everything they could to make it comfortable for us and so on. But the Department of Corrections in Nevada was been less, except for those early caseworkers, they've been less enthused about it until now. There's been a lot of changes since we did those earlier. So everything's changing now, and we just ended our legislature here, and so they're tied up a lot because there's a lot of bills that have to do with the system and the criminal justice system and the imprisoning and all of that. So I'm thinking now that that stress is past, we're going to get back on track and work on it. But contact people. I have a friend who just moved from Reno. She wants to see it in another state. She's contacted AVP in that state, and she's starting to see if she can get people together. And I know there are facilitators nationwide who are willing to travel and work and help it happen places.
To kind of get it established in a new facility, maybe.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And is that pretty much getting in touch with like the community resource manager at the facility would be the person?
Well, I can only speak for Nevada, where we have to go through the Department of Corrections and their whole thing, and there's the deputy director in charge of programs. But in other places, it could be different.
Okay.
As I said, when we started out here, it was those caseworkers who encouraged the warden to do it, and it was successful there, and so then it spread, and then anyway, it's just the word of mouth spread for a while, and that's a good thing. Just getting in the door.
Have you had any returning citizens who said they wanted to go back in as part of AVP?
So far, they have not allowed people to go back in so far. Now, but two men are on our facilitation team. In fact, two of them are on our team, and one of them is doing the workshop with me tomorrow. Both of those men were very long time prisoners, very long time. And they make such a powerful impact in a workshop because they're so frank about their own stories and how life changed for them after AVP and things like that. So yeah, and not everybody can do it. So these men are both able to have retired and can survive, but not everybody can get that involved. But they do. They make because their lives, their experiences have been so different, and so they're very frank about it.
And you may have mentioned this. How often do you go in, or are the sessions held?
Before COVID, we were getting once a month in 4 facilities. No, I shouldn't say that. 1, 2, 3 Nevadas, and then once in a while in the federal. But it did get to be very full. We were on 2 different yards in one place, and it was getting to be a lot. But we had enough facilitators to cover it all. Now we don't have that many, and it'll take a while to get it built up again. But we're working towards it. I want to see. I used to tell the guys, my daydream, my fantasy was that one day all of the AVPers inside would outnumber the non-AVPers, and therefore the whole place would be transformed. So I don't know. That didn't happen.
Nice.
But
Let's see. Do we have any other questions or comments from folks? David, did you have any other?
I just wanted to ask you, do you pay the facilitators?
Everything's voluntary with AVP. We all of us facilitators are volunteers. We had a sponsoring group before, not now, but they used to pay for, they were 501c3 entity, and they would pay for like motel rooms when we had to travel 90 miles to one of the prisons. They pay for the gas, pay for supplies. We have paper and pens and stuff like that. Nothing super pricey, but they sponsored us that way. Across the nation, over the years, there's a listserv that we can communicate with one another. The topic of paying formerly incarcerated people to be facilitators has come up because the majority of them are not wealthy, and they are not, they either have to have a job and take time off their job, or they just don't have the money to, or the time away that they can give. And in that case, the discussion is always, we pay a stipend. Some groups have decided they want to pay a stipend because formerly incarcerated are very good facilitators, and they are very, their stories are, their honesty and their stories are very impactful, and they make a huge difference in a workshop. But it's possible to have workshops without them. But I'm just saying, the decision to pay has happened at different groups. The discussion comes up all the time, and a lot of groups say, no, we're sticking to the all volunteer stuff, and other groups saying, I don't see anything wrong with this being a stipend. It's not a huge payment, but it's a stipend to do a workshop because it helps somebody who's not rolling in money.
Thank you.
So it's allowed. It's not, but mostly we're
Marshall.
not paid.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Rita, for what you're doing. That's just so exciting. I just wanted to end the meeting with some exciting things that are going on. I'm working now with 5 returning citizens, and it's the most satisfying thing I've ever done. Byron Alexander was the first. About 4 months ago, I met him, and in 2 months, we had him start a business, and 2 months later, he's got a very successful business. And over Mother's Day, he wanted to go out, and in his area, he saw some women that were homeless. And so he wanted to, on Mother's Day, to go out and give them food. And I had Christian Science textbook, Science and Health, and Bibles, and he wanted to minister to them. And so he came back and he found that an awful lot of them were single Spanish women with very small children living in tents. And so a number of people in our Angel Church got together and got a bunch of toys and stuffed animals. And so that next week he went there. And he doesn't just go and give them food and hand them science and health. He actually ministers to them and makes them responsible for being there the next week. It's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And then also Troy is, I think, on Zoom now, and I'm working with Troy. And basically, we're working on coming up with a transition house. And he's going to go ahead and rent a home, and then Byron's going to help remodel the home, and we're going to move people from that need transition homes. So that's very, very exciting. We're doing a lot of really exciting things, and I just wanted to share that with you.
That's wonderful, because there's such a need. There's such a need for, they come out with so few resources. It's not fair. It's not just, but that's such a need for that. And for people to be doing it just because they care about other people. That's the whole thing.
Well, that's what I've seen about all of these folks that come out of prison that have become Christian Scientists, that their total goals and demeanor have totally changed, and they want to give back. Every one of them, that's their goal, and it's just so beautiful to see.
Mm.
Do you have any mechanisms to keep in touch with folks who have been through your program once they are released and are back home?
Yeah, there's a Nevada Department of Corrections rule that we can't correspond with people on the inside. However, they can send us letters, and we had a PO box for many years, but then I closed it because it was just waste of time. But we're going to reopen a new one, and so we give out our PO box, and people, they'll send us sometimes a Christmas card or just a letter and tell us what the workshop meant to them, or and sometimes they'll ask us a favor, and we know we can't do that. We're like, can you get in touch with my family or something? We can't do that. We can't take messages for them or anything, but we do love to hear from them and hear, what's their news. Are they moving to another prison or getting out, or had a reunion with a family member, things like that. So it happens, not a lot. And then all of our inside facilitation team, they don't contact with us until we're there. Then we plan our workshops when we get there. But yeah, and I'm happy for people I give out my email all the time. That part doesn't bother me.
And then are people in touch with you through like JPay or Securus or anything like that? Or
No, we've not done that because the rules say we shouldn't.
and are you going in as a religious activity or is this as a
No.
program?
We tell them if you have to pick a category, we say educational. But then I'll hear the officers at the guardhouse or wherever, they'll say, "Oh, it's a religious group." And I said, "No, we're not." And they said, "Oh, well, it's the same thing. They assume we're a religious group." And I said, "No, we're not." But officially, we're listed as an educational program. They just have certain categories for the programs.
Okay. Let's see. Thanks for that. Any other questions? David, did you have any other like final questions that you were like, I want
No, I had 5 of them. So that would be a lot longer of a meeting. And but I want to thank you, Rita, because this was a bit of an eye opener. And some beautiful stuff is going on. I just love for us to stay in touch.
I would too, and I've heard personally from Marilyn and Steve that how gratifying it was for them to be part of your program, and so I'm happy to know we coexist.
For sure.
Well, come to our next conference. It's going to be in Boulder, Colorado.
Nice.
All right. Well,
We picked it because of its beauty.
I know it. It is pretty there.
Right at the foot of the Rockies, just pretty beautiful.
Do you have if anybody wants to support what you're doing there in Nevada on your Nevada website, Rita, do you have a donate link or anything like that?
We do not. The relationship we have with our 501c3 that since the COVID years, that some of the people there changed, and but that's on our agenda to get to where you can donate, because right now it's not a tax write-off.
Got it. Okay.
So the facilitators are doing it, but we also had a man recently say he wanted to sponsor this next workshop. So people do step up, and it's wonderful.
Nice.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing.
Thank you for listening to me babble.
What you're doing. It's really exciting to hear the different things that folks are doing and the overlap, the connections, and just learning that you know, we're not alone, and you're not alone, and we're all kind of in this together. And
Yeah.
really
And
exciting.
you know, just the little bit I've listened from all of you, it's a similar attitude that um, just we care about our other people, and other people, just because they're inside doesn't mean they lose their humanity.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, and thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. And we'll get this posted to the website soon. And thanks again, Rita.
Thank you, Rita.
Appreciate you.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.